Welcome to Echoes of Ihsan. Today we're going to be diving deep into Sahih Bukhari,
Okay.
specifically Book 41,
Yeah.
which tackles loans, debt repayment, bankruptcy.
Oh, wow.
All the fun stuff when it comes to finances, but from an Islamic perspective.
Okay.
And you've shared some really interesting hadiths from this book, and I'm excited to kind of unpack them with you
Yeah.
and see what kind of gems of wisdom we can uncover.
I think it's fascinating how relevant these teachings from centuries ago remain in our modern world, The principles, financial responsibility, and ethical conduct, and
Right.
the importance of intention. They all resonate so deeply with the challenges and opportunities that we face today.
Totally. And speaking of authenticity, I know Sahih Bukhari is considered one of the most trusted collections of hadiths.
Yes.
But for anyone who may not be as familiar, can you quickly remind us what makes it so special and what a hadith actually is?
Of course. So a hadith, in essence, is a record of the Prophet Muhammad's sayings, actions, and silent approvals.
Okay.
So think of it as a window into how he lived and applied Islamic teachings.
I see.
Now, Sahih al-Bukhari is considered one of the most authentic collections because Imam Bukhari, the compiler, was incredibly meticulous. He spent years verifying the chain of narrators for each hadith,
Right.
ensuring its reliability and accuracy.
Okay.
It's like a historical treasure trove, carefully curated and passed down through generations.
So we're dealing with the gold standard of hadith collections here.
Absolutely.
Okay, let's jump into Book 41. What struck you as we started kind of exploring these hadiths on loans and financial matters?
What's fascinating is the emphasis on justice, fairness, and compassion, even in something as seemingly transactional as money. It's not just about cold, hard numbers, but about upholding ethical principles in every financial interaction.
Right.
You see this thread woven throughout the book.
I'm seeing that too. Like there's this very powerful story about Jabir bin Abdullah.
Yes.
His father passes away, leaving behind debts.
Right.
And Jabir is struggling to repay the creditors.
Sure.
It's a situation that many can relate to even today.
Right. And what's beautiful here is how Jabir turns to the Prophet Muhammad for guidance.
Okay.
It's not just about the financial burden, but also the emotional and spiritual weight that he's carrying.
So what happens? Does the Prophet just tell him to work harder?
Not at all. The Prophet prays for Jabir.
Okay.
And this is where it gets really interesting. Jabir's date palm orchard yields an extraordinary harvest, far beyond what anyone expected.
Wow.
He's able to repay all of his father's debts and even has a surplus left over.
Whoa, that's amazing.
Yeah.
But it's more than just a feel-good story, right?
Absolutely.
What's the deeper message here for someone going through financial hardship?
This hadith reveals that even when facing financial hardship, actively seeking solutions while trusting in divine support can yield unexpected results. It's about combining practical effort with sincere prayer, recognizing that while we have a responsibility to work towards solutions, ultimately, it's Allah who provides.
It reminds me of that saying, tie your camel and then trust in God.
Yeah.
You've got to put in the work, but also have faith that things will work out in the end.
Absolutely.
This hadith really drives that point home.
Exactly. It's not passive resignation, it's active trust.
I see.
And speaking of action, another striking aspect of Book 41 is how the Prophet Muhammad walked the talk, embodying these principles in his own financial dealings.
Right. It's not just theoretical advice. He lived by these values.
Absolutely.
I remember reading a hadith where he states that he wouldn't want a mountain of gold for more than 3 days.
Yes.
Unless it was specifically to repay debts.
Yes.
That's a powerful statement coming from someone who could have easily amassed wealth.
Absolutely. And he went even further, saying those rich in this world would have little reward in the hereafter, unless they spent their wealth in the way of Allah.
Okay.
So this highlights a key concept in Islam. Wealth isn't inherently evil, but it comes with responsibility.
Okay.
It's a trust from God, and we are accountable for how we use it.
So it's about using wealth not just for personal gain, but also for the benefit of others for charitable purposes.
Absolutely.
And for contributing to the well-being of the community.
Exactly.
Like a stewardship model. We're entrusted with resources to manage responsibly.
Precisely. And the Prophet's actions reinforce this idea.
Okay.
There's that story where he owed a camel and insisted on repaying with one of equal or greater value.
Wow.
His companions had difficulty finding one, but he wouldn't settle for less, even though it was inconvenient.
So he could have easily taken a shortcut, but he didn't.
Exactly.
It shows that even in the smallest transactions, fairness and upholding commitments were paramount.
Yeah.
It sets a high standard for how we should approach our own financial dealings.
It's not just about legality. It's about exceeding expectations and demonstrating integrity in all our actions.
Okay.
So these hadiths emphasize that even in financial matters, going that extra mile to be ethical and considerate is crucial.
Now let's get into some of the specific teachings on loans.
Sure.
I came across a hadith that says Allah will repay those who take loans with a sincere intention of repaying.
Yes.
But there's also a warning for those who borrow with the intent to default.
Yes. Intention is a cornerstone in Islam.
Okay.
It applies to every aspect of life, especially financial transactions.
Okay.
If you borrow money genuinely planning to repay, Allah will support you.
Okay.
But if you borrow with the intention of not repaying, it becomes a breach of trust, a moral transgression with spiritual consequences.
It's not just about the lender.
Right.
It's about the borrower's own spiritual well-being.
Exactly.
Dishonesty can create inner turmoil and distance a person from Allah.
Exactly. And this concept of ethical conduct extends to how we treat others, even when they don't act in the best way.
Right.
I'm thinking of that story where a man demands his debt from the Prophet.
Oh, yeah.
In a very harsh and disrespectful manner.
Yes. It paints a very vivid picture.
Yes.
This man is publicly berating the Prophet, demanding his money back in a way that was completely unacceptable. How did the Prophet react?
So this is where it gets truly insightful.
Okay.
Despite the man's rude behavior, the Prophet advocates for treating him with respect.
Okay.
And instructs his companions to find a camel of even better quality to repay the debt.
Wow.
He demonstrates extraordinary patience and composure, choosing kindness over retaliation.
So even though he was in the right, he didn't stoop to the man's level.
Absolutely.
It's a powerful reminder that our conduct should reflect Islamic values, regardless of how others behave.
Yes.
It's about rising above the situation and responding with grace and wisdom.
Precisely. It's a reminder that we shouldn't let anger or frustration lead us to act unjustly, even when we feel wronged. This hadith also highlights the importance of upholding the rights of others, even when they don't reciprocate the same courtesy.
It challenges us to ask ourselves, how do we respond when faced with challenging situations? Do we react impulsively? Or do we strive to maintain our composure and act with integrity?
It's a lifelong lesson in embodying Islamic values, even in the face of adversity.
And speaking of compassion, I recall a hadith that beautifully illustrates the rewards associated with easing the burden on others. It tells the story of a businessman who was forgiven for his sins on Judgment Day.
Wow.
Because he was lenient with those in debt.
So his compassion in financial matters had a profound spiritual impact.
Yeah.
It wasn't just about writing off a few debts. It reflected his character and earned him forgiveness.
Wow. So it shows that our financial dealings have spiritual consequences.
Absolutely.
It's not just about profit and loss. It's about how we treat others, particularly those who are struggling.
Exactly.
This hadith encourages us to go beyond strict contractual obligations and consider the human element in our financial interactions.
Absolutely.
It raises a bigger question. What's Islam's overall stance on debt?
Sure.
Is it something to be avoided entirely?
That's where it gets really interesting. Islam recognizes that debt can be a necessary tool in certain situations. However, it also emphasizes approaching it with caution and responsibility. The Prophet often sought refuge from being in debt, highlighting its potential pitfalls and burdens.
I remember a hadith where he warned that being in debt can lead to lying and breaking promises.
Absolutely.
It's easy to see how the pressure of debt could push someone to compromise their integrity.
Absolutely. It creates a sense of desperation that can cloud judgment and lead to unethical choices.
This hadith serves as a cautionary reminder to carefully consider the implications of taking on debt. And to exhaust all other options before resorting to borrowing.
Absolutely.
So it's about weighing the necessity of the debt against the potential risks to one's well-being and ethical conduct.
Absolutely.
It's a delicate balance for sure.
Indeed. And while Islam doesn't prohibit debt outright, It strongly advises against excessive or irresponsible borrowing.
Okay.
It encourages careful planning,
Right.
mindful spending,
Right.
and living within one's means
Right.
whenever possible.
You know, this whole discussion has illuminated the importance of intention and ethical conduct in financial matters.
Yeah.
It's not just about following rules.
Right.
It's about embodying these principles in our daily lives.
And that's what makes these teachings so profound.
Right.
They offer timeless guidance on navigating the complexities of finance while remaining grounded in the values of justice, compassion, and integrity.
Wow. We've covered so much ground in this first part of our deep dive.
We have.
Exploring the significance of Sahih Bukhari, the importance of intention, and the Prophet's exemplary conduct in financial matters.
Absolutely.
What else did you find intriguing in Book 41 that we could explore further?
You know, there's a hadith that I think deserves more attention.
Okay.
It addresses the Prophet's role as a guardian for those who leave behind debts or weak offspring.
Okay.
A topic that resonates so deeply with the Islamic emphasis on social responsibility and communal support.
That sounds fascinating. Let's definitely delve into that in the next part of our deep dive.
Yeah.
I'm eager to unpack the wisdom and guidance these hadiths offer on that topic.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, great. We'll pick it up there.
Awesome. Welcome back to our deep dive into Sahih Bukhari, Book 41.
I know, right? These hadiths feel like they could have been written yesterday. With all the financial complexities we face in the modern world, it's incredible how these teachings from centuries ago address these timeless human experiences.
Absolutely. And in the last part, we talked about how the Prophet Muhammad not only preached about ethical financial conduct, but also embodied those principles in his own dealings.
Right. Like, he wouldn't want a mountain of gold for more than 3 days unless it was to settle debts.
Exactly.
And his insistence on repaying that camel with one of equal or greater value, even though it was hard to find, that really stuck with me.
It speaks volumes about his character and commitment to fairness, doesn't it?
Yeah.
And there's another hadith that I find particularly fascinating. Because it shows the Prophet participating in a financial transaction that was very common at the time. He actually bought foodstuff on credit from a Jewish merchant.
Wait, really? He bought things on credit?
Yeah.
I guess I always imagined financial transactions back then being more straightforward, like bartering or cash only.
It's easy to assume that.
Yeah.
But credit was actually common practice in those days. And what's even more interesting is that the Prophet mortgaged his iron armor as collateral for the purchase.
Wow. That really challenges my assumptions about historical financial practices.
Right.
It's a reminder that even in the past, people used credit to manage their expenses and secure essential goods.
Exactly.
It also normalizes the idea of utilizing personal belongings as security for a loan.
Right.
As long as it's done ethically and responsibly, of course.
Exactly. This hadith demonstrates that Islam doesn't advocate for complete isolation from existing economic systems.
Yeah.
It recognizes the practicalities of life and encourages engagement in a way that aligns with Islamic principles.
I see.
Plus, there's that interfaith dimension, the Prophet engaging in a financial transaction with a Jewish merchant.
That's a really important point.
Yeah.
It speaks to the universality of the ethical principles, transcending religious boundaries.
Yeah.
It shows that fairness and trustworthiness are paramount in all dealings, regardless of faith or background.
It's about upholding principles of justice in all our interactions, regardless of who we're dealing with.
Right.
And this hadith exemplifies how Islam promotes peaceful coexistence and ethical business practices within a diverse society.
It also challenges the notion that religious teachings are always about separating ourselves from the other.
Right.
This hadith shows that Islam recognizes the importance of engaging with and respecting those from different backgrounds, especially in the marketplace where interactions are so common.
Absolutely. It underscores the common ground we share as human beings, striving for fairness and ethical conduct.
And speaking of upholding agreements, another hadith that stood out to me was the one where the Prophet sells a camel to Jabir bin Abdullah, but allows Jabir to continue riding into Medina.
Oh, yes. That story really struck me, too.
It's such a subtle gesture, but it speaks volumes about the Prophet's character and his consideration for others.
Right.
He could have easily taken possession of the camel immediately, but he recognized Jabir's need for transportation and accommodated that need with kindness.
It's a beautiful example of empathy in action, isn't it?
Yeah.
It shows that even in financial transactions, there's room for compassion and understanding.
Right.
It's not always about maximizing profit or sticking rigidly to the terms of the agreement.
Yeah.
It's about recognizing the human element and acting with generosity.
And it's not like he was losing out financially.
Right.
He still received the agreed-upon price for the camel.
Exactly.
It was more about going beyond the strict letter of the contract to show kindness and understanding.
It's about going the extra mile, exceeding expectations, and demonstrating that even in business dealings, compassion and empathy have a place.
Right.
And this principle of generosity is something we see emphasized repeatedly in these hadiths.
You're right. I'm remembering that hadith where the Prophet emphasized repaying debts in the most handsome manner possible.
Absolutely.
It's not just about returning what you borrowed. It's about expressing gratitude and recognizing the favor that was done for you.
Absolutely. In several hadiths, we see the Prophet emphasizing the importance of not just repaying debts promptly, but also doing so in a way that's generous and considerate. Like when he owed a camel of a certain age, he insisted on repaying with the camel of equal or greater value, even though his companions had to search extensively to find one.
It's almost like he's saying, don't just meet the bare minimum, go above and beyond to express your appreciation for the help you received. It really elevates the whole concept of financial responsibility. It's not just about avoiding debt or paying it off quickly. It's about cultivating a spirit of gratitude and generosity in all our financial interactions.
Precisely. This principle applies even today. When someone lends us money, we should strive to repay them promptly and with sincerity, expressing our gratitude for their willingness to help us in a time of need. It's about recognizing the human connection behind the transaction and acknowledging the kindness that was extended to us.
It adds a whole other dimension to financial responsibility, doesn't it?
Absolutely.
It's not just about numbers and obligations. It's about recognizing the impact our actions have on others and striving to act with integrity and kindness.
And that spirit of generosity and compassion is reflected in another hadith we discussed earlier, where the Prophet praises a businessman who was forgiven for his sins because he was lenient with those in debt. It highlights the immense rewards associated with easing the burden on others. It's a powerful reminder that our financial dealings have spiritual implications. It's not just about profit and loss. It's about how we treat others, particularly those in need.
It's like a ripple effect. When we show compassion in our financial dealings, it not only benefits the person we're helping, but also has a positive impact on our own spiritual well-being.
Exactly.
It creates a virtuous cycle of generosity and blessings.
It's a beautiful reminder that financial matters are not just about material gain. They're intertwined with our spiritual growth and our relationship with Allah.
So we've talked about the Prophet's example, the importance of intention and the virtue of compassion. But what about some practical tips for managing our finances from an Islamic perspective? What guidance can we glean from these hadiths?
One of the most important takeaways from these hadiths is the emphasis on avoiding unnecessary debt. The Prophet often sought refuge from being in debt, highlighting the potential pitfalls and burdens associated with it.
There's that hadith where he mentions how being in debt can lead to lying and breaking promises.
Exactly.
It's easy to see how the pressure to repay, especially if you've borrowed more than you can handle, could lead someone down a slippery slope.
Exactly. It's a reminder to carefully consider the implications before taking on debt. And to explore all other options first. If debt is unavoidable, we should approach it with a clear plan for repayment and avoid accumulating excessive amounts that could lead to hardship and potential compromise of our integrity.
It's about being mindful and responsible, not letting debt control our lives or dictate our choices.
And if we do find ourselves in debt, these hadiths encourage us to be proactive in seeking solutions. Remember the story of Jabir bin Abdullah, whose father died in debt? He didn't just despair or try to hide from the problem. He actively sought guidance from the Prophet, and through prayer and hard work, found a way to repay his father's debts.
It's a powerful reminder that even in difficult circumstances, we shouldn't give up hope.
Absolutely.
We should seek guidance or work diligently towards solutions and trust in Allah's help.
Exactly.
It's about combining faith with action.
Yeah.
We don't just passively wait for miracles.
Right.
We actively work towards resolving our financial challenges while seeking divine assistance.
Precisely. It's about taking ownership of the situation and striving to make things right even when it's challenging.
And beyond avoiding unnecessary debt, these hadiths also offer valuable insights into financial planning and foresight.
Ah, that's interesting.
How so?
Well, the Prophet consistently encouraged his followers to make provisions for their families and loved ones, ensuring their well-being even in their absence.
Right. There's that hadith where he stated that if someone leaves behind weak offspring who are unable to support themselves, it becomes the community's responsibility to step in and care for them.
Exactly. It highlights the collective responsibility we have to support those in need, particularly those who are most vulnerable.
Right.
But this hadith also emphasizes the importance of individual planning. It suggests that we have a duty to provide for our families even after we're gone.
So it's about taking a long-term perspective.
Exactly.
Not just living for the moment, but thinking ahead.
Right.
And making responsible choices that will benefit our families in the future.
It's about being good stewards of the resources Allah has entrusted us with.
Right.
That means using them wisely to meet our present needs, while also planning for our future and ensuring the well-being of those who depend on us.
It's about creating a safety net for our loved ones.
Yes.
And contributing to a society where everyone feels supported and cared for.
And this emphasis on responsibility extends to all our financial obligations.
Right.
Another hadith that stood out to me was the one where the Prophet states that delaying the repayment of a debt by a wealthy person is an act of injustice.
That's powerful. It really highlights the responsibility that comes with wealth. If you have the means to repay a debt, there's no excuse for delaying it unnecessarily.
It's about being considerate of the other person's situation.
Right.
And understanding that delaying payment can create hardship and financial strain for them.
Right.
It's about recognizing that our actions have consequences.
Yeah.
And striving to act with integrity and compassion.
And this principle applies even if the lender doesn't demand repayment right away.
Exactly. Okay.
It's about taking the initiative to fulfill our obligations promptly. And recognizing that delaying unnecessarily can have a real impact on someone else's well-being.
Exactly. It's about going beyond the letter of the law.
Right.
And acting with a sense of moral urgency.
Okay.
Recognizing the human impact of our financial decisions.
And this emphasis on fairness extends to all our transactions.
Absolutely.
I'm reminded of that hadith where a man who was frequently cheated in the marketplace sought advice from the Prophet. The Prophet advised him to say no deception whenever making a purchase.
I love that.
It's such a simple phrase, but it carries so much weight. It's about setting a clear intention for honesty and transparency from the outset.
Absolutely.
Ensuring that both parties are entering the agreement with a mutual understanding and commitment to fairness.
It's about drawing a line in the sand and saying, this is how I conduct my business. I will not engage in deception or take advantage of others. And this principle of transparency applies to all sorts of transactions, from buying and selling goods to negotiating contracts and investments.
It's about establishing a reputation for integrity and trustworthiness in all your dealings. Which, in the long run, is far more valuable than any short-term gains you might achieve through dishonesty.
It's about fostering a culture of ethical conduct where deception has no place. And I think this brings us back to a central theme we've been exploring throughout our deep dive, the concept of Ihsan.
Yes, Ihsan, that beautiful concept of striving for excellence. And doing things in the best possible way, as if you see Allah watching over you.
Absolutely.
We've talked about it in the abstract. But I'd love to hear more about how we can practically apply this concept to our financial dealings.
That's a great question. I think Ihsan, in the context of finance, is about bringing that heightened awareness and intentionality to every financial decision we make. It's about recognizing that our financial choices are not merely transactional. They're an opportunity to manifest Islamic values and strengthen our connection with Allah.
So it's about infusing our financial decisions with a sense of purpose.
Exactly.
And ensuring that they align not just with our material goals, but also with our spiritual aspirations.
Exactly. For instance, when considering a loan,
Okay.
Ihsan prompts us to evaluate not just the financial terms, but also the potential impact on our character and our ability to fulfill our commitments.
Okay.
Will taking on this debt compromise our integrity?
Right.
Will it lead us to make choices we later regret?
It's about thinking beyond just the numbers.
Yeah.
And considering the ethical and spiritual dimensions of our choices.
And when we're repaying a debt,
Yeah.
Ihsan inspires us to do so promptly, generously, and with gratitude.
Hmm.
It's about recognizing the kindness that was extended to us.
Right.
And expressing our appreciation in a tangible way.
It's about transforming a simple financial transaction into an act of virtue and appreciation.
And in our everyday financial interactions, Ihsan encourages us to be honest, transparent, and fair in all our dealings.
Right.
It's about treating others with respect and consideration, even when it comes to something as seemingly mundane as buying groceries or negotiating a business deal.
It's about bringing that sense of spiritual consciousness to every financial exchange, no matter how small or insignificant it may seem.
By embodying Ihsan in our financial dealings, we elevate them from mere transactions to acts of worship, reflecting our commitment to Islamic values and our desire to please Allah in all that we do.
It's a beautiful way to live our lives, bringing meaning and purpose to every aspect of our existence, including our relationship with money.
And that's what makes these hadith from Sahih Bukhari so profound. They offer not just rules and regulations, but a framework for living a life of purpose and meaning. A life where even our financial decisions reflect our spiritual values and our commitment to ethical conduct.
I'm sensing a theme here, that Islam doesn't compartmentalize our lives. Spirituality isn't separate from finances. It infuses every aspect of our existence.
Absolutely.
But before we get too philosophical, I'm remembering that intriguing hadith you mentioned earlier. About the Prophet's role as a guardian for those in need. I'd love to hear more about that in our next segment.
Welcome back to the Echoes of Ihsan podcast.
I'm so glad we're continuing this deep dive into Sahih Bukhari, Book 41.
We've covered so much ground already. From the importance of intention in financial dealings to the Prophet's exemplary conduct as a model for ethical behavior.
It's been eye-opening to see how these teachings from centuries ago are still so relevant to our lives today.
Absolutely. And in this final part of our deep dive, I want to shift our focus to a topic that's often overlooked in discussions about finance. Inheritance.
Oh, yes. You mentioned this earlier, and I'm really curious to explore it further.
Inheritance is a crucial aspect of Islamic law. And these hadiths provide valuable insights into how it should be handled fairly and ethically.
I know in many cultures, inheritance can be a source of conflict and disputes, especially when it comes to dividing assets among family members.
That's true. And these hadiths offer guidance on navigating these sensitive matters with justice and compassion.
So what kind of guidance do we find in these hadiths regarding inheritance?
Well, there's a hadith that states that if someone leaves behind property, it goes to their inheritors.
That seems straightforward enough.
But there's an important caveat.
Oh, tell me more.
The hadith also mentions that if the deceased leaves behind weak offspring, those who are unable to support themselves, then it becomes the community's responsibility to care for them.
That's a really interesting nuance. It seems to suggest that inheritance isn't just about dividing up assets. It's also about ensuring the well-being of those who are most vulnerable.
Exactly. Islam recognizes the right of individuals to bequeath their wealth to their heirs, but it also emphasizes the importance of caring for the vulnerable members of society, particularly orphans and those who are unable to provide for themselves.
It's like a built-in safety net, ensuring that even those who are left behind are taken care of.
Precisely. It's a beautiful example of how Islamic teachings promote social responsibility and communal support. It's not just about individual rights. It's about collective well-being and recognizing our interconnectedness as a community.
This hadith really challenges the individualistic mindset that's so prevalent in many societies today.
Absolutely.
It reminds us that we have a duty to care for one another, especially those who are struggling or in need.
Absolutely. And this principle of communal care is further emphasized in another hadith that I find particularly powerful. It's the one where the Prophet Muhammad says, if a true believer dies and leaves behind some debt to be paid or needy offspring, then they should come to me as I am the guardian of the deceased.
Wow, that's such a strong statement. It really highlights the Prophet's commitment to justice and ensuring that the rights of the vulnerable are protected even after death.
It goes beyond simply offering words of comfort. Right. It's a declaration of responsibility, a commitment to personally ensure that those who are left behind are cared for and their needs are met.
It sets such a high standard for leadership, demonstrating that true authority comes with compassion, empathy, and a willingness to act on behalf of those who are most in need.
It's a model not just for leaders, but for all of us.
Right.
It reminds us that we all have a role to play in supporting orphans, widows, and those struggling financially.
It's about recognizing that everyone deserves dignity and support.
Absolutely.
Regardless of their circumstances.
And this sense of shared responsibility creates a stronger, more compassionate society where everyone feels valued and cared for.
It's truly inspiring to see how these teachings interweave financial matters with spiritual principles and social responsibility.
As we delve deeper into these hadiths, it becomes evident that Islamic teachings on finance extend beyond mere transactions and encompass a holistic approach to wealth responsibility and ethical conduct.
It's about recognizing that wealth is a blessing from Allah, and that with that blessing comes the responsibility to use it wisely and ethically.
It's about finding that delicate balance between pursuing our own financial well-being and contributing to the well-being of others.
It's about understanding that our financial decisions have ripple effects.
Absolutely.
Impacting not just ourselves, but also our families, our communities, and the world around us.
This deep dive has been an incredible journey. Revealing the depth and wisdom of Islamic teachings on financial matters.
I feel like we've only just scratched the surface. There's so much more to explore and contemplate within these hadiths.
And that's the beauty of it.
Right?
These teachings offer endless opportunities for reflection and application in our own lives.
Before we wrap up, I want to circle back to that beautiful concept of Ihsan that we've been discussing throughout this episode.
Yes. Ihsan striving for excellence and doing things in the best possible way, as if you see Allah watching over you.
It's such a powerful concept.
It is.
How can we practically apply Ihsan to our financial dealings?
It's about bringing that heightened awareness and intentionality to every financial decision we make, big or small.
So, for example, when we're considering taking on a loan, Ihsan encourages us to think not just about the interest rates and repayment terms, but also about the potential impact on our character and our relationships.
Exactly. It's about asking ourselves, will this debt burden me in a way that compromises my integrity or my ability to fulfill my obligations to others?
And when we're repaying a debt, Ihsan inspires us to do so with promptness, generosity, and gratitude, recognizing that we were given assistance in a time of need.
It's about going beyond the bare minimum and expressing appreciation for the kindness that was extended to us.
And in our everyday financial interactions,
absolutely,
Ihsan calls us to be honest, transparent, and fair in all our dealings, treating everyone with respect and consideration. By embodying Ihsan in our financial dealings. We elevate them from mere transactions to acts of worship, reflecting our commitment to Islamic values and our desire to please Allah in all that we do.
It's a beautiful way to live our lives. Bringing meaning and purpose to even the most mundane aspects of our existence.
This deep dive has shown us that Islamic teachings on finance offer a profound and practical framework for navigating the complexities of wealth, debt, and financial responsibility in a way that aligns with our spiritual values.
It's been an incredible journey.
It has.
And I encourage all our listeners to continue exploring these hadiths and reflecting on how they can apply these timeless principles to their own lives.
And remember, the pursuit of knowledge is an ongoing process.
Absolutely.
May Allah guide us all toward financial wisdom and ethical conduct in all our dealings.
Ameen.
Jazakallah khair for joining us on this deep dive.
Wa jazakallah khair. Until next time, may your financial decisions be guided by wisdom, compassion, and the beautiful concept of Ihsan